It is 7 o'clock in a cold Orlando morning, and we're heading out to go swim with manatees. It is cold. Oh, it's cold, it's cold, it's cold. The breeze just blow and the breeze just blow there and it just changed the whole game. That's roll. It's cold. Okay, so before some of y'all kill me for this, I have seen the West Indian manatee in and around the river. So just to get in here, yes, I have seen them in this entire triangle already. And what I was going to see is not the West Indian manatee, it's actually the Florida manatee. This trip would have started all the way up at Orlando, like so. And if that was the home base, took us all the way to the western coast to a place called Crystal Springs. And this is where we had the encounters. This entire bay area is known as Kings Bay, I believe, and it's right in here, right in the middle of all the civilization, that we would find these Florida manatees. So we linked up with Real Florida Adventures to make this trip possible. We only had to drive 15 minutes. They took us for the next 2 hours in this. Okay, some things to note, and we'll start with the first one. The water is very cold. Well, for me, it's 21 degrees Celsius in the water. Apparently, this is why the manatees gather in this area at this time of the year. Although it's relatively cold for me and some people that were over there, this is by all means warmer than what it would be out in the wider Gulf of Mexico or the wider area that they live in. So 21 is a good trade-off for them. They swim through the mangroves, up the rivers, and they reach to these springs and they stay warmer. And believe it or not, a manatee is not fat. It has like about 10% body fat only, which is why it comes up into this 21 degrees Celsius water, just to keep warm, conserve energy. The guys are trying to find manatees in slightly deeper water. This is where they can be active, they can swim, they can approach you, whereas you will see later in the video, there are several that were sleeping in the shallow sand, and that's all they did. They were lying down on the ground or they were coming up for a breath. Not too interesting. The other more important thing is that there are rules for interacting with the manatee. You're not supposed to approach them. If they approach you, it's a different story. But even so, there are still guidelines to follow. So check me out. And if you cannot tell, I got really lucky. Everyone else on the trip was off looking in another direction, and this lonely manatee came up underneath a jetty. I used one of the structures or the supports with the jetty as cover, but when this animal approached, the sheer size of it, although it looks to be moving gently, any sudden movement could result in an injury, so had to make sure and hide behind the post. And this is Carrie giving a better demonstration of what they call the starfish pose. You just stay on the surface and do nothing. If it's coming toward you, then you try to do something. She also got lucky here. This is the actual spot where we saw the manatee. Now compare that to Trinidad. That would never happen. This is one of the vents for the springs that I was talking about, and I went over it, I put my hand and my feet in it, and I was not impressed. It was the source for what I would call the cold water in the area. 21 degrees Celsius. Cold for us, but a lifeline for them. This guy was like a big, fat, playful puppy. Of all the manatees, he was the only one that was lying down on the sand on his back instead of his belly, and he kept rubbing and wiggling his back into the sand just like a dog would do when they're playing. Just look at him. I know plenty of us could relate with this animal as our spirit animal. You would see that I would also get really lucky with this manatee, because when it came up for a breath, before it did so, it came straight toward me. You might actually hear it take a breath. Here's what every other manatee would look like in the shallow area, lying down with their faces tucked away in the sand, only moving when it's time to come up for a breath and go back down to the bottom again. Yeah, I get cold, even wearing a wetsuit. I had enough. I saw, and I would remember. Hope you all enjoyed this one.